The challenge at the Hong Kong Motor Show. Bruce Lee's training hall in Hong Kong was packed on that humid afternoon in 1964. The air smelled of sweat, leather and tongue oil, as advanced students and curious people crowded around the young master, who demonstrated his technique with the precision of a Swiss watch. Each movement was a controlled explosion, the 1-inch punch threw a student backwards without Bruce even fully extending his arm, the Jeet Kune Do flowed like water, dodging and counterattacking before the opponent noticed. Among the spectators, Wong Jackman watched with his arms crossed, his face impassive in the dim light of the lamps. He was a man of average height, but his presence carried the weight of decades of training in traditional Chinese martial arts. A master of northern Shaolin, Wong had arrived in Hong Kong with a formidable reputation, and made no secret of his distrust of Bruce's westernized style. "Your Jeet Kune Do is fast," said Wong, breaking the silence after a particularly impressive sequence, "but speed without roots is like a branch without a tree. You can even take down these students, but against a true master, your technique will break." Bruce stopped mid-motion, his muscles still tense, and slowly turned around. His eyes, dark and penetrating, fixed on Wong. "And what would a true master do?" he asked, his voice calm, almost casual. Wong smiled, a gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "He would make you see that your art is incomplete. That without the discipline of Qi, without respect for the ancient ways, you are just a fighter, not a martial artist." A murmur passed through the hall. Bruce didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked to a nearby table and grabbed a towel, wiping the sweat from his forehead with deliberate movements. When he spoke, it was as if every word was a calculated blow. "I respect the old ways," he said, "but I don't kneel to them. Kung Fu is not a museum. It's a tool, and tools must evolve. If you think you can show me something I haven't seen yet, then prove it." Wong didn't hesitate. "Tomorrow. In Master Chan's hall. At 9 o'clock at night. No rules, no audience. Just the two of us and what we really know." Bruce nodded, throwing the towel back on the table. "Tomorrow, then." Master Chan's hall was an austere space, lit only by paper lanterns that cast long shadows on the wooden walls. The tatami floor creaked underfoot, and the smell of incense mixed with the earthy scent of tea cooling on a side table. Wong was already there when Bruce arrived, wearing a simple black gi, hands relaxed at his sides. "No weapons?" Bruce asked, taking off his shoes. "No weapons," confirmed Wong. "Just hands and feet. As it should be." Bruce wasted no time. As soon as he got into position, he launched a front kick, quick as a whip, aiming for Wong's plexus. The master dodged with an almost imperceptible lateral movement and counterattacked with a direct punch. Bruce blocked, but felt the impact reverberate up his arm. Wong wasn't just fast, its strength came from a solid, rooted foundation. The two circled the room, exchanging blows that echoed like muffled thunder. Bruce used his speed and unexpected angles, but Wong anticipated each movement with almost supernatural precision. With every block, every deflection, it was as if he knew exactly where Bruce would strike before the blow was even thrown. "You're good," admitted Wong, after dodging a sequence of punches and delivering a palm strike that made Bruce retreat. "But your technique is chaotic. You fight like a Westerner, thinking only about winning, not dominating." Bruce wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "And you fight as if time stopped in 1800. The world has changed, Wong. Kung Fu also needs to change." Wong didn't respond. Instead, he assumed a low stance, hands open in a classic Shaolin guard. Bruce recognized the sign. It was the prelude to something more dangerous. The master advanced, not with direct blows, but with a series of fluid, almost dancing movements. Each attack seemed to lead to another, an endless stream of techniques that Bruce could barely keep up with. He blocked a punch, dodged a kick, but Wong was already spinning, delivering a spinning back kick that hit him in the chest and threw him against the wall. Bruce fell to his knees, panting. Wong didn't attack him right away. Instead, he waited, like a teacher waiting for the student to understand the lesson. You rely too much on your speed, Wong said. And in your strength. But true kung fu is not about winning. It's about not needing to win. Bruce stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the words. He knew Wong was right, in part. His art was young, raw, still in formation. But he also knew that he could not bow to dogma. Maybe, he said, taking a deep breath, but I'd rather be a living fighter than a dead martial artist. Wong frowned, but there was no anger on his face, just a kind of sadness. Then you will never understand. The two stared at each other for a long moment. Then, without another word, Bruce bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. Wong reciprocated. There was no declared winner that night. But they both knew something had changed. Bruce left the room with a sore body, but a sharp mind. Wong stood back, watching the lanterns sway gently, as if carrying the weight of a departing era. And so, between shadow and light, the dragon and the tiger had measured themselves, not to prove who was better, but to understand that true combat never ends. He just transforms. The weight of choices. The days that followed were strangely silent. Bruce returned to his training, but something in him had broken and, at the same time, strengthened. The techniques he once performed with mechanical precision now carried a new intent, less about winning, more about surviving. He avoided the gazes of the other students, especially those of Li, Wong's young disciple, who watched him with a mixture of admiration and resentment. A week later, the master announced that he would go on a journey to visit distant temples, searching for ancient scrolls that, according to him, contained lost secrets of Wing Chun. Before leaving, he called Bruce privately. You have talent, Wong said, handing him a small silk package. But talent without purpose is like a dull sword. Bruce unfolded the fabric and found a necklace of dark wooden beads, each engraved with a different character. These are the 8 principles of the path. They are not to be memorized, but lived. Bruce held the necklace, feeling the weight of the unspoken words. Wong wasn't punishing him. I was giving him a chance. What if I fail? He asked, unable to contain his doubts. Wong smiled, for the first time in a long time. Then fail better. The shadow of the past. As Wong traveled, rumors began to circulate around the city. A group of foreign mercenaries, known as the Steel Wolves, had been hired to cleanse the poorest districts of Hong Kong, where the Triad's influence was growing. But the truth was dirtier. They were hunting martial arts masters, eliminating those who refused to submit to a new power emerging from the shadows. Bruce learned of the attacks by chance, when an old friend of his father, an herb merchant, appeared on his doorstep with a bloody face. They burned down Hung Gar's school on Lantern Street, the man whispered, shaking. They said it was a warning. Bruce felt his blood boil. Wong was far away. Li, despite being skilled, was still young and impulsive. And the other students? Too fearful to act. That night, he gathered the few who still had courage. Among them, Mei, a young woman who trained in secret, disguised as a man, and Lao, a former soldier who had lost an arm but not his honor. We are not warriors, said Lao, looking at the ghost arm. We're just people trying to survive. Then we will survive together, Bruce replied, squeezing Wong's necklace in his fist. The Night of the Wolves. The attack came at dawn, when fog still covered the alleys. The Steel Wolves weren't just brutes, they were trained, disciplined, and carried weapons the likes of which Bruce had never seen, curved blades that buzzed as they sliced through the air, electric batons that left their victims convulsing on the ground. Mei was the first to fall, hit by a poison dart. Lao fought like a demon, using his one arm to disarm 2 opponents before being knocked down by a blow to the back. Bruce felt the taste of iron in his mouth, but he didn't stop. He moved as Wong had taught him, not to win, but to last. When the leader of the mercenaries, a tall man with scars on his face, advanced on him, Bruce didn't back down. Instead, he let the blow come, dodging at the last second and using his enemy's own momentum against him. The mercenary's blade embedded itself in the wooden wall behind them. "You fight well," the man growled, pulling out a pistol. "But that won't save you." Bruce didn't hesitate. He threw himself to the side as the shot rang out, feeling the bullet graze his ear. Before the mercenary could fire again, a shadow moved behind him. "Wong." The master said nothing. He just spun, and his baton hit the man's wrist, sending the pistol flying away. The fight that followed was short, brutal. Wong did not fight to kill, but to disarm, to humiliate. As the leader of the Steel Wolves fell to his knees, bleeding but alive, Wong looked at Bruce. "Now do you understand?" Bruce took a deep breath. Yes, he understood. It wasn't about being the strongest. It was about being the last one to fall. The path forward. The Steel Wolves left, but left a trail of destruction. Wong's school was in ruins, Mei was still recovering from the poison, and Lao had lost more than an arm, he had lost his faith. "What do we do now?" Li asked, looking at the rubble. Wong did not respond immediately. Instead, he picked up a piece of burnt wood and wrote on the ground. "The dragon does not fear fire. It dominates it." Bruce looked at the words, then at his master. "You knew this was going to happen." "I knew something was coming," Wong corrected. "The world is changing. Martial arts are no longer just about tradition. They are about survival." "And what does that make us?" asked Mei, getting up with difficulty. Wong smiled, for the first time in a long time. "Makes us the only ones who can teach others how to fight." Epilogue: The Art of Living. Years later, Bruce Lee was no longer just a student. He had opened his own school, where he taught not just techniques, but philosophy. Wong, now older, visited from time to time, watching silently as Bruce trained a new generation. "You've changed," Wong said once, as they watched a student perform a clumsy chi saw. "I grew up," Bruce replied. Wong shook his head. "No. You found your own path." Bruce smiled. He was no longer the impulsive young man who had challenged his master that night under the lanterns. But he also wasn't the perfect warrior Wong had once dreamed he would become. He was just Bruce. And that was enough. Outside, the sun was setting over Hong Kong, painting the sky red and gold. Somewhere, a new fight was beginning. But there, in that moment, there was peace. And perhaps, Bruce thought, that was the most important thing. Don't win every battle, but choosing which ones were worth fighting for. The Last Dragon. Years passed, and Bruce Lee continued to teach, to fight, to live. Hong Kong knew him as a master, Hollywood saw him as a phenomenon, but to those who truly understood him, he was just a man in search of something he couldn't even name. One day, a challenge came to him. He was neither a student nor a common rival. He was a fighter from a rival school, a man who had vowed to humble Jeet Kune Do and prove that traditional martial arts still reigned supreme. His name was Chen Wei, a Tai Chi Chuan master who carried with him the arrogance of someone who had never been defeated. "He wants a public fight," said Linda, his wife, as she leafed through a local newspaper. "They say he has already defeated dozens of practitioners of his style." Bruce looked out the window, observing the movement of the streets. It wasn't the first time someone had challenged him, but there was something different about this confrontation. Maybe it was age, maybe it was the feeling that the world was changing faster than he could keep up. "And will you accept it?" asked Linda, worried. Bruce smiled, but his eyes were serious. "It's not a question of accepting. It's a matter of understanding." Asterisk. The chosen location was a crowded gym, with spotlights and cameras recording every movement. Chen Wei entered first, surrounded by his disciples, all dressed in white, moving with a slow, calculated grace. When Bruce appeared, alone, wearing only sweatpants and a simple shirt, the audience murmured. "Did you come without protection?" Chen asked, with a condescending smile. "I don't need protection," Bruce replied. "I just need space to move." The Tai Chi master struck first, with a circular strike that seemed slow but carried the weight of years of training. Bruce dodged easily, counterattacking with a quick sequence of punches that made Chen retreat. The audience screamed in surprise. But Chen was no ordinary opponent. He absorbed the blows, redirecting Bruce's strength against himself, using his own speed to knock him off balance. Bruce felt the ground shift beneath his feet, as if the air itself was conspiring against him. "You fight like a wild animal," Chen said, as Bruce recovered. "But the true art is in control." Bruce took a deep breath. He knew this philosophy. I had heard it before, from Wong, from other masters. But something inside him rebelled. "Control is an illusion," he replied, moving forward again. "Life is not controlled. It is lived in." This time, when Chen tried to redirect his attack, Bruce didn't resist. Instead, he followed the movement, spinning with it, transforming the opponent's strength into his own. Chen felt the world spin, and before he could react, he was on the ground. The audience burst into applause. Chen stood up, embarrassed but with grudging respect in his eyes. "You win," he said. "But it didn't prove anything." Bruce helped him to his feet. "I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to fight." Asterisk. In the months that followed, Bruce continued to teach, to film, to live. But something had changed. He felt the weight of the years, the pressure of a body that no longer responded as before. And, most of all, he felt the shadow of something bigger than himself. One night, while training alone in his backyard, Wong appeared. "You still fight," said the old master. "Always," Bruce replied, without stopping. "Even when there's no one to see?" Bruce stopped. He looked at Wong, at the wrinkles on his face, at the eyes that had seen so much. "Especially then." Wong nodded, as if that was the answer he was expecting. "You found your peace." Bruce smiled. "Perhaps." Asterisk. In July 1973, Bruce Lee was in Hong Kong, working on a new film. It was an ambitious project, something he hoped would change the way the world viewed martial arts. But that night, while discussing details with his team, he felt a sharp pain in his head. "Bruce?" Linda called, worried. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. The world around him went dark. Asterisk. The funeral was simple, as he would have wanted. Wong was there, as were his students, his friends, his family. Linda held his hand as people talked about his legacy, about how he had changed everything. But Wong said nothing. He just watched the coffin being lowered, feeling the weight of an era that was coming to an end. "He chose his battles," he murmured finally. And in a way, that was all that mattered. The sun set over Hong Kong, as it had done so many times before. Somewhere, a new fight was beginning. But there, at that moment, there was only silence. And the memory of a dragon that flew higher than anyone imagined. The weight of legacy. The days following the funeral were strangely empty. Linda would wake up before dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold tea in her hands, looking at the space where Bruce used to train. The apartment, once full of laughter and the sound of punches against the punching bag, now echoed with the silence of an absence she still couldn't name. Wong, in turn, disappeared without explanation. Some said they had seen him in the alleys of Kowloon, others swore he had left for the mainland. But the truth was, he had nowhere to go. Bruce had been his last link to a world that no longer existed, a world of masters and disciples, of codes and honor. Now, there was only the emptiness of those who knew too much and could do so little. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, 8-year-old Brandon Lee began having nightmares. He dreamed of a man with piercing eyes who told him, "You will understand one day." He would wake up screaming, and his mother, Linda, would run to calm him, not knowing that those words were not just a dream. Asterisk. Return of the Dragon. 3 years later. Bruce's dojo in Hong Kong had been closed, the doors locked, the walls covered in dust. But one night, someone picked the lock. The lights came on, revealing a young man in his early 20s, thin, with scars on his knuckles and an expression that wavered between determination and despair. "Who are you?" asked a female voice from the door. The young man turned around. It was Linda, older, but still with the same strength in her eyes. "My name is Danny." Danny Rand. He hesitated. "Bruce was my master." Linda crossed her arms. "Bruce didn't accept students." "He had no choice," Danny replied, lowering his voice. "My father was your friend. He left me in Bruce's care when I was a child. But I failed. I couldn't protect him." Linda studied him for a long moment. Then, without saying anything, he threw him a key. "The dojo is yours now. But know one thing, Bruce didn't die by chance. Someone wanted him out of the way. And if you really were his student, you'll want to know who." Danny took the key, feeling the weight of what it meant. It wasn't just a legacy. It was a debt. Asterisk. The last battle. The following months were a spiral of violence and revelations. Danny discovered that Bruce's death was not an accident. A criminal syndicate, led by a man named Victor Creed, a mercenary with connections in the martial arts underworld, had poisoned his tea during a demonstration. Bruce knew something was wrong, but he chose not to back down. "A dragon doesn't run away," he had once said. With the help of Linda and an old contact of Wong's, Danny tracked Creed to an abandoned warehouse in Macau. The place smelled of blood and burning oil. Creed was waiting for him, smiling, with a curved blade in his hand. "You're Bruce's boy, aren't you?" He laughed. He always had a soft spot for orphans. Danny didn't respond. He just assumed the Jeet Kune Do posture, his fists raised, his breathing controlled. "You're no match for me," Creed sneered. "I know," Danny said, calmly. But neither was he. And then, the fight began. It wasn't a battle of strength. It was a dance of precision, of calculated blows, of dodges that seemed impossible. Creed was faster, stronger, more experienced. But Danny had something he didn't have, the fury of someone who knew he couldn't lose. In the end, it was a spinning kick, the same one Bruce had used against Wong years before, that hit Creed in the temple, knocking him down. The mercenary fell to his knees, spitting out blood. "Why?" he grunted. Danny approached, his voice cold. "Because a dragon never flies alone." And then, with a sharp blow, he ended it. Asterisk. The flight continues. The sun rose over Hong Kong, turning the sky gold and red. Danny was on the roof of the dojo, looking out over the city that never slept. Linda approached, silent. "And now?" she asked. Danny took a deep breath. "Now, I teach." As he would have done. Linda smiled sadly. He would have liked that. And somewhere, between the shadows and the light, a dragon watched, satisfied. Because some stories don't end. They just change their wings.